Hi, this is George Aguilar, and we're back again with the second webisode of First Edition, the All Things Comics, Film, and Pop Culture podcast. First up, I'd like to talk a little comics news. This past month, fans everywhere got a glimpse of the highly anticipated upcoming Marvel film, Guardians of the Galaxy, when the first full trailer debuted. This film is directed by James Gunn and adapts the adventures of Marvel's premier spacefaring team of heroes, starring Chris Pratt of Parks and Rec, and Zoe Saldana of Star Trek Into Darkness, and an ensemble cast. This film looks to bring the scope of Marvel Studios films to a galactic level. We'll talk more about the Guardians later, but for now, back to recent news. And speaking of trailers, the second preview of the upcoming legendary picture, Godzilla, has debuted and teases even more of the fearsome giant monster we know and love. As a big fan of Godzilla from seeing the movies as a kid, I'm definitely looking forward to this film. After the 1990s Godzilla film let me and so many fans down, this film looks to be a return to form for the towering force of nature. Can't wait to see more. The film will be out this May 16, 2014. Another announcement that caught the attention of many DC Comics fans was the debut image of Grant Gustin in costume as TV's The Flash. The costume looks like an updated post-New 52 version of The Flash, and shares the look and texture of the costume worn by Henry Cavill in Man of Steel. With a lot of positive buzz surrounding the CW's Arrow, and the possibility of their version of Oliver Queen joining the Justice League in the upcoming Justice League film, many are wondering if this Flash will also be coming to the big screen in the near future. I was also excited to learn that new Doctor Who comics will be coming soon. It was announced that 2 new Doctor Who ongoing comics series launched by IDW will be arriving soon, with each comic following the adventures of David Tennant's 10th and Matt Smith's 11th Doctors. As a huge fan of the show, and especially of those 2 incarnations of the Doctor, I'm very excited. Now if only we can find a way to get an ongoing for Christopher Eccleston's 9th Doctor. And probably the most controversial news is the recent casting of the new lineup for Fox's upcoming Fantastic Four reboot. No, it's not outrage over the use of a CGI thing, but the casting of African-American actor Michael T. Jordan as the originally Caucasian Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch. Personally, I feel Jordan is an excellent actor and will bring his own flair to the character, but many have been outraged over the casting. Internet forums have run the gamut of criticisms ranging from offensive and racist to valid and insightful. Some posts mentioned the casting as forced character diversity, and another stated Fox was trying to fill a minority quota. While I think Jordan's casting is going to turn out fine, I do have some concerns of my own. My main concern is, why is there a need to make changes like these at all? These characters have survived for decades as they were originally created. I tend to dislike when major changes occur in the transition from comics to film. I'm not sure how filmmakers can say, let's change this and make it this. I think Guillermo del Toro put it very well in an interview from a long past Comic-Con panel on one of the special features from the Hellboy DVD set, when he said something to the effect of, "I hate it when some idiot producer tries to tell me to make changes to the character. One producer said, well, can he, meaning Hellboy, be human half the time? Maybe when he gets mad he can change into Hellboy." To which Del Toro responded in his heavy accent, "No, he's red all the time. He doesn't change or transform. He's Hellboy." After this comment, he was met with massive applause from a packed Comic-Con audience. I wholeheartedly agree with this because fans love the characters as they are and who they are. Unnecessary and needless changes, whether intended or not, alter the character, usually in unfavorable ways. It also seems like a bad idea to me from a business perspective. I say this because if you have an established audience, for example comic book fans, who already want to come out and spend their money to see a movie about their favorite characters, why would you piss them off so much that they may boycott the film? This should be easy money, but needless changes can and do piss off fans enough for them to avoid a film when it comes out. And to anyone who says comic fans don't really matter because the films are made for major audiences, just tell that to the swarm of comic-based films that appear in theaters increasingly since 2000's Spider-Man film. The fans make this happen, so I hope we're given a little more respect. Although there is an underlying problem that many have ignored or don't pay too much attention to. It's the question of, where are the movies about heroes of diversity? I'm actually surprised we're having this conversation in 2014, because 10 plus years ago, an African American comic book hero named Blade slashed his way into the box office, earning millions and spawning a trilogy of films that still hold up even today. Well, not so much Blade Trinity, but definitely the first two. After the successes of the first two films, I was almost certain we'd be seeing a Black Panther or Luke Cage Power Man film, or any number of minority characters that inhabit these vast comic book universes. But 10 plus years later, and here we are. Where are the Black Panther and Luke Cage films? I recently read an interview with Djimon Hounsou about taking on a role for Guardians of the Galaxy. In the interview, he talks about why he wanted to be a part of the Marvel films, stating that when his young son said he wished he were a lighter skin color so he could be Spider-Man or Iron Man, it unsettled Hounsou deeply, and guided him to show his son characters of ethnic diversity exist and play a part in these films too. On a side note, I think he would make an excellent Black Panther. Unfortunately, these are topics many people of diverse backgrounds are having to address, but only time will tell if there will be any changes. And next up are reviews, starting with Kick-Ass 3 Issue 6. I recently read Issue 6 of Kick-Ass 3 by Mark Millar and John Romita Jr. And while I really like the characters, I feel the Kick-Ass 3 series has been a mixed bag for me. This issue mainly focuses on Mindy, aka Hit Girl, and is primarily told through flashbacks. We get to see some of Hit Girl's earliest trials of combat. In these flashbacks, she is joined by her father and trainer, Big Daddy, who continuously trains Mindy, thus ensuring she's capable of extraordinary feats and preparing her for their very personal war on the mob. When the issue returns to the present, you see just how transformed Mindy has become from her early days to her post-incarceration days. Without giving away too much, this issue ends on a cliffhanger that left me really wishing the next issue was out already. Although, while I really enjoy the Kick-Ass stories, I feel some of the plot beats are definitely hit or miss. And for the most part, I feel Dave's, aka Kick-Ass's role in Kick-Ass 3 has been a miss. I think again, the story is strongest when focusing on Mindy. I find myself most engaged when I'm reading what Hit Girl's next move is, especially after the fallout from the conclusion of Kick-Ass 2. This is really unfortunate because Kick-Ass and Hit Girl are both great characters and should both be interesting, but for the most part, in this series, I was mainly concerned with Hit Girl only. That's not to say Hit Girl's story is 100% the best part of Kick-Ass 3. There have also been issues on her end too. But as a whole, I feel Kick-Ass 3 suffers from another problem entirely. I feel this particular series has been really dragged out. What could have been an action-packed 5 to 6 issue series has been dragged out to an 8 issue series. And while I generally enjoy longer series, I felt that throughout this series especially, there was a lot of filler that if removed would have strengthened the pace and the story as a whole. It was also a little sad reading Mark Millar's editorial page where he discusses how Kick-Ass 3 number 8 will indeed be the end for these characters. That could mean a lot of different things, but one thing he made clear is that there will be no plans for any Kick-Ass sequels. While there's still 2 more issues to go, and I'm still sure issue 8 will be action-packed, based on the previous issues, Kick-Ass 3 may not live up to its predecessors. And next up is a review for Star Wars Crimson Empire. For anyone who ever wondered about those very cool looking guards from the Star Wars films, you know, the ones draped in crimson cloaks and helmets, the ones who personally guard the Emperor, who later gets his scary ass handed to him by his most trusted minion Darth. Yeah, those guys. The Emperor's Royal Guard were definitely one of the coolest and mysterious aspects of the original trilogy. Like Boba Fett, these guys look like people you don't mess with. Unfortunately, the films offer very little information about these ominous warriors. That's why when I saw a copy of Dark Horse's Star Wars Crimson Empire trade paperback, I had to get it. Taking place 7 years after the Battle of Yavin, or the end of the film Return of the Jedi, Crimson Empire shows the disastrous state of the Empire after the Emperor's death. Arguably, none have been more impacted than the Emperor's Royal Guard, who are in a state of disarray after their leader's demise. Without spoiling too much, the story focuses on one particular guardsman named Karner Jax, who's on a one-man mission of vengeance against one of his own. This story takes place in the expanded universe of the Star Wars mythology. expanded universe being anything that takes place before, during, and after the original trilogy films in any format such as books, cartoons, comics, video games, and more. Having been a fan ever since seeing these silent figures draped in crimson in the films and wanting to know more, I'm happy to say Crimson Empire offers a lot of background to these mysterious characters. It was great to read about their selections and training process, and even better actually seeing them in action. One of my favorite scenes in the comic include the lone guardsman, Karner Jax, fighting against a small army of Imperial stormtroopers. Wielding his force pike and side blaster, Jax single-handedly lays waste to an advancing force of enemies. I would definitely recommend this read to anyone who's a fan of Star Wars, or anyone who just plain wants a good read. This story definitely captures the essence of the original films, and provides insight into the world of the Empire. Although don't expect to see a lot of Rebels versus Empire smackdown, this story is definitely Empire-driven from the perspective of a former Royal Guardsman. The story also has some great cameo moments from the Emperor, Darth Vader, and even Wedge Antilles. This story was great, so definitely search this one out. I'd also like to review the book Cell by Stephen King. I just finished this 300-plus page book that is one of King's most recent works. I gotta say this book was definitely not what I was expecting, but in a good way. Going in, I thought this book was going to be Stephen King's version of the zombie-infected apocalypse, but it actually was something else altogether. Without giving away too much, the premise of the story follows an artist on a mission to save his son after an apocalyptic event that has forever changed the world. While early on in the story it does share some familiar tropes of the zombie apocalypse story, it quickly evolves into something else entirely. The main antagonists of the book being the majority of the Earth's population, who have been afflicted by the pulse due to our almost constant use of cell phones. These phoners are now something else entirely. I found myself most intrigued by the phoners because they are very different from the run-of-the-mill villains that usually inhabit these types of apocalyptic stories. They're almost a new life form with some very interesting abilities as well as mysterious motivations. The book was an interesting read, but I did feel somewhat unfulfilled with the ending. I felt it seemed rushed. I would have liked to get more insight on the phoners because they seemed very unique to me, and while their actions seemed sinister in nature, I felt they were evolving beyond the more traditional notions of right and wrong. That being said, Cell was a great read, and I'm looking forward to the upcoming film adaptation starring John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson, who last starred together in the Stephen King adaptation 1408. On a side note, since we're talking Stephen King film adaptations, I would really love to see some of Stephen King's other works adapted for the big screen, including the Dark Tower series, a remake of The Stand, and The Talisman, but I guess I'll have to settle for Cell for now. Now back to Guardians of the Galaxy. After viewing the trailer, I'm very optimistic about the upcoming film, and I really feel it captures the Marvel Studios aesthetic, as well as the comic aesthetic of the team. But while I've been a fan of the Guardians for a long time, many casual filmgoers may have little or no idea of who or what the Guardians are about. So here's a rundown of the teams, past and present. The original Guardians of the Galaxy were created by Arnold Drake and Gene Colan, and made their debut in Marvel Superheroes number 18 in January of 1969. The team consisted of 4 interstellar heroes from the 31st century who united to face an intergalactic threat known as the Badoon. The original team roster included Major Vance Astor of Earth, who is a time-displaced astronaut from our time. Next is Yondu Udonta of Centauri 4, and known for his dark blue skin, towering red mohawk, and skill in the use of a bow. As far as I can tell, he's the only one of the original Guardians who will be appearing in the new film, and is played by Michael Rooker. Another teammate is Martinez Tanaga of Pluto, who is recognizable by his diamond-like appearance. And finally, there's Captain Charlie 27 of Jupiter, who is a very fierce warrior. Later additions to the team include characters Nikki and Starhawk. Together, these heroes were some of Marvel's earliest attempts at expanding into galactic territory, along with their other popular spacefaring creations, the Silver Surfer and Galactus. The team would later headline their own ongoing comic title in the early 1990s that was comprised of members from the original team, along with many new additions. These heroes would carry out the majority of their adventures in their own time, but most notably crossed over with the present-day Marvel heroes in an effort to combat the powerful entity known as Korvac during the Korvac saga. This was a little bit of history on the past team, and with the exception of Yondu Udonta, who will be played by Makwa Rooker in the upcoming film, they probably won't be making any cameos in the new film. Although that's not to say if the Guardians perform well in the box office, that they may appear in future films. Now on to the current and most recent incarnation of the Guardians team that will be the focus of the upcoming film. Here's a little background on this ragtag group of heroes. The most recent incarnation of the team joined forces in the Annihilation series from Marvel. While not explicitly called the Guardians of the Galaxy, many members of the current team, including Star-Lord, Drax the Destroyer, and Gamora, along with Nova, joined forces to combat the universal threat of Annihilus and the Annihilation Wave. This series is also one of my favorite Marvel stories, and is well worth hunting down. The seeds for the current Guardians team are planted here, but it isn't until Annihilation Conquest, a follow-up series to the previous Annihilation story, that the current Guardians joined forces. This team was comprised of Star-Lord, Rocket Raccoon, Drax the Destroyer, Gamora, and Groot, along with other heroes Quasar, Moondragon, Ronan the Accuser, and Adam Warlock. Okay, I just named a lot of heroes who aren't Captain America, Iron Man, or Thor, so let me give a little background on these characters. The leader of the team is the enigmatic and often sarcastic Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord. Star-Lord has a convoluted history, so leave it to say he's a part alien, part human hero with exceptional fighting skills, usually wielding two hand blasters, and is a brilliant military strategist. Star-Lord will be brought to life by actor Chris Pratt of Parks and Rec, who I feel is a perfect fit for the sarcastic but noble character of Star-Lord. Next up is Drax the Destroyer. Originally created for the sole purpose of killing the Mad Titan Thanos, aka the big baddie from the Avengers credits, this green-skinned berserker warrior is extremely skilled in combat, but is usually blinded by his desire to kill Thanos. Drax will be portrayed by the massive Dave Bautista in the film. Another green-skinned ally is Gamora, who is known as the deadliest woman in the galaxy. Gamora is a former collaborator of Thanos's, who is known for her beauty as well as her skills of warfare. She will be played by the beautiful actress Zoe Saldana in the upcoming film. Next up is Rocket Raccoon. This pint-sized hero was originally experimented on to create a ferocious fighting machine. This hero is known for his sarcasm, love of large guns, and loyalty to his friends, especially the tree-like alien being known as Groot. Rocket will be computer-generated in the film and will be voiced by the talented Bradley Cooper of the Hangover series. Finally, rounding out the team is the towering tree-like alien known as Groot. Hailing from Planet X, Groot is a prince on his world. In his massive form, Groot is a being of few words, and is well known for his war cry, "I am Groot." Groot is a formidable warrior and unwavering ally. His strong friendship with Rocket Raccoon is a source of humor and a staple of the unique and quirky aspects of this team of heroes. Groot will also be computer generated in the film, and will be voiced by the amazing Vin Diesel of Fast and Furious fame. I'm most excited for Vin Diesel's Groot because after reading an interview from director James Gunn, Gunn praised Diesel's tremendous efforts to bring Groot to life. These offbeat and unexpected heroes are the last line of defense against universal threats. While the Avengers tackle Earth's problems, the Guardians work on a universal scale to protect our universe. I was really pleased with the first full trailer for the upcoming film. I thought it captured the essence of the team and the humor and quirkiness of the comics. Director James Gunn, whose recent work includes Slither, has done an excellent job of casting and creating a world I feel fits right in with the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I really admire Marvel's efforts to stray from the norm and to take a chance with these heroes, and that's putting it lightly, really. This is actually a huge gamble on Marvel's part, because this is really the first unknown property they've produced. Other than Blade and Ghost Rider, this is another property that is a lot less known than some of their other projects that have made it to the big screen, including Daredevil and the Fantastic Four. There is a lot riding on this film because Marvel is testing the water with this film in regard to some of its other lesser-known properties, such as Ant-Man and Doctor Strange, which are rumored to be part of the Phase 2 film initiative. If Guardians doesn't do well, it could halt these projects, as well as others that haven't been announced yet. I think the film is in great hands though, and I can't wait to see it. And come back for my next podcast for more Guardians talk. We'll now give an overview of the villains and other characters joining the Guardians of the Galaxy when the film hits theaters August 1st, 2014. And on a solemn note, I wanted to end the show with a tribute to Harold Ramis, who was best known for the role Egon Spangler of Ghostbusters fame, who passed away this past February. A pillar of 80s films, Ramis wrote and directed many beloved films and was most famously known for his roles in Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters 2, as well as Stripes, again starring with Bill Murray. He was a master in the crafts of writing and directing, and created such hits as the films already mentioned, along with Caddyshack, National Lampoon's Vacation, Analyze This, and Groundhog Day. Ramis was beloved by so many for his comedic gifts, and will be greatly missed. Well, that's a wrap. Come back next week and we'll talk more comics, film, and pop culture. I'm George Aguilar, and thanks for listening.